In 1989, author Michael Crichton released the techno-thriller novel Jurassic Park. The novel set Hollywood ablaze and sparked a bidding war for the film rights before it had even hit shelves. Contenders like James Cameron were in the running before Steven Spielberg and Amblin Films secured the movie rights. Crichton wrote an original draft of the screenplay before David Koepp came in and wrote a new draft that went on to be filmed, and Jurassic Park the movie released in cinemas in the summer of 1993. Hi there, I'm Stumo. And for the first video on this channel, I wanted to look at one of my favourite films of all time, especially because it's the 30th anniversary this year. Jurassic Park. Looking into the screenplay and beyond, to see what worked and what made Jurassic Park the timeless hit it is today. I'll be looking at the synopsis, structure, themes, characterizations, and how this all comes together in the final film. As any writer knows, the final draft of the screenplay isn't finished until the final edit of the film, so that's the version we're going to be looking at today. Join me as we take an in-depth look at Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park begins with a hook, an opening scene in a screenplay designed to grab the audience's attention and to be connected to the overall plot. Jurassic's hook shows us a cage emerging from a tropical jungle with various workers standing by. We are also introduced to the character Robert Muldoon, played by the late Bob Peck, before we are informed by text that the action is taking place on Isla Nublar, a remote tropical island off the coast of Costa Rica. The cage is lowered onto a transport platform while something inside watches Muldoon and the workers inside. Muldoon orders the workers to move the cage towards a paddock, where the gatekeeper, Joffrey, stands by. He raises the gate, but the cargo inside has other plans, launching itself against the wall of the cage and dislodging it, causing Joffrey to fall. The creature inside grabs Joffrey and hauls him back into the cage. Muldoon springs into action to try and pull him away, but is unable to save him, instead ordering the workers to shoot him! We then transition into the first act proper, as a lawyer, Donald Gennaro, played by Martin Ferrero, arrives at a Dominican amber mine hoping to find John Hammond, the CEO of the genetics company InGen. Gennaro is clearly out of place, and the amber workers make fun of him. Some exposition is given about Joffrey, namely that his family is suing the company for $20 million and Hammond isn't even there to see Gennaro. Instead, he's with his daughter, who's going through a divorce. Gennaro argues that the accident has investors nervous and they want to get some experts to sign off on the island to ensure its safety. He already has someone called Ian Malcolm, but he also wants to get Alan Grant. The Amber manager tells Gennaro he'll never get Grant out of the field, while looking at the prize of their efforts, a mosquito preserved in amber. We then cut to a paleontology site where diggers are unearthing something that's too big to be a velociraptor in a place that definitely isn't Mongolia. Yes, some creative liberty is taken with the depictions of the dinosaurs in these films, but I'm not going to get into the whole feathered versus non-feathered debate, as that theory didn't really gain traction until the late 90s, a few years after this film's release. There have also been some more recent story retcons that say that the animals in the films aren't actually that genuine, and even in the book, Henry Wu describes them as approximations of what we thought dinosaurs were, because, well, no one knows. That doesn't mean I'm not going to poke fun at it occasionally, though. Back to the dig, we meet the protagonist of the film, Dr. Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill, and his romantic partner, Ellie Sattler, played by Laura Dern. Grant observes a new piece of technology that can create pictures of the dinosaur they're digging up, identifying it as a velociraptor. Grant doesn't like computers and describes the velociraptor to the group gathered, noting how it appears similar to birds. Some little shithead dares to insult the grand creature, causing Grant to give him a blow-by-blow account of how these animals would have hunted him, by luring him into a trap and eviscerating him before eating him alive. Thoroughly traumatizing the young child, Grant walks back to the dig with Ellie, decrying children. Ellie tries to convince him that kids aren't that bad, partly because she'd like to have one. Grant remains unconvinced. It's at this point that the inciting incident occurs. The inciting incident is an event which kickstarts the main story of the plot. It's different from the hook, as it affects the protagonist and serves to pose the question, how will the protagonist respond to the incident? The inciting incident of Jurassic Park occurs when some madman flies into the dig site on a helicopter, ruining their work. Grant and Ellie rush to confront the culprit, finding eccentric Scottish billionaire John Hammond in their trailer, played by the late Richard Attenborough. Originally confrontational with him, they quickly realise he is the man who signs their cheques, and treat him with the reverence due to a rich white man. Hammond has a proposition for them. Come and check out his biological preserve on a private island, which is right up their alley. Sign off on the park, get the lawyers off his back, and he'll fully fund their dig for another 3 years. The answer to Grant and Ellie is a simple one. Hell yes. I mean, a weekend on some billionaire's private island. How bad could it be? It's at this time we cut to a particularly shady character, Lewis Dodgson, played by acting coach and convicted sex offender Cameron Four. That's why you never saw him in Dominion. Well, that and Campbell Scott is just a much more well-known actor. Four plays Lewis Dodgson, the CEO of Biosim, a rival genetics company to InGen. He is at a cafe in San Jose to meet Dennis Nedry, the head of security at Hammond's Island and an extremely disgruntled and greedy man. Get it? Dodgson gives Nedry a big suitcase full of cash as a down payment and promises to give him a cool $1.5 million if he smuggles 15 different species of embryo off the island. He gives Nedry a fake Barbasol can to hold the embryos in, saying that it can hold them for up to 36 hours and that the embryos have to be back by then. Nedry says he'll live up to the deal, meeting Dodgson's acquaintance on the boat at the East Dock the following night. Dodgson asks how he plans to beat security, with Nedry telling him he's got an 18-minute window, and in that time, his company will catch up on 10 years of research. Nedry then makes Dodgson pay for his meal, as he's a cheap bastard. Meanwhile, a chopper flies to Isla Nublar. Inside are Hammond, Grant, Ellie, Gennaro, and Daddy? I mean, Doctor. Dr. Ian Malcolm, renowned mathematician and known sex pest. Sorry, rock star. Malcolm has reservations about Hammond's little science project, particularly when chaos theory is applied to it. Hammond brushes him off and Malcolm throws some flirtatious banter Ellie's way before Hammond sees the island approaching off to the helicopter's rear. The helicopter flies over some beautiful scenery and begins to land. We get some foreshadowing with Grant securing his seatbelt with 2 female ends before they land on Isla Nublar and are led to some jeeps branded with the Jurassic Park logo. The cars drive them further into the island, where Gennaro informs Hammond that this weekend isn't a jolly, but rather a very serious investigation into the stability of the island. Hammond tells him he'll accept his apology in 48 hours. Actually, it wouldn't even have taken that long. The cars pull up in a scenic field, and while Ellie is engrossed in a plant like a nerd, Alan sees why they're really there. A full-on goddamn dinosaur, a Brachiosaurus, is casually walking through the field, snacking on the treetops. Astounded, Grant and Ellie climb out of the cars to get a closer look. Grant realizes what he's looking at is real as Hammond joins them. The Brachiosaurus realizes that this is the first act turning point, the end of the first act, and rears up to give the people what they want, before crashing back down to the ground. Gennaro sees dollar signs, and even Malcolm is impressed. Hammond tells him they have a T-Rex, causing Grant to nearly faint. He manages to stay conscious as Hammond welcomes them to
Jurassic Park.
Grant turns to see a scenic masterpiece, Brachiosaurs and Parasaurolophus grazing by the river, just like they would have millions of years ago. Grant has only one question.
How'd you do this?
Concluding the first act. The dinosaurs are revealed and the new world has been entered. The second act begins with the cars pulling up to the visitor center. Hammond is excited to show them exactly how his company made the dinosaurs, and Grant questions his relevance in the new world.
We're out of a job.
An exposition dump is given, with Hammond showing them, and us, the audience, a cringy theme park video detailing how InGen scientists extracted prehistoric blood from mosquitoes trapped in amber, narrated by a fun little character called Mr. DNA. They also show that they used frog DNA to fill in the gaps in the genome, a fact that will become important later. The ride then begins, showing the group the labs where the scientists are working. The process is designed to be viewed through the glass, but Grant, Ellie and Malcolm say screw that and force their way out, wanting to see for themselves. Just like the dinosaurs will. They venture into the labs where they find Henry Wu, Jurassic Park's head scientist, played by B.D. Wong. They observe a hatchery where one of the eggs is conveniently in the process of hatching. Hammond says this is good, as he insists on being present for the birth of every creature on this island. So that was a fucking lie. A baby dinosaur breaks out of the egg and Grant and Ellie fawn over it, while Malcolm challenges Hammond's claim, saying that he can't be there for the ones that are bred in the wild. Will tells him that all the animals in the park are engineered to be female, so there is no chance of that happening. Malcolm challenges this, saying that that level of control is simply not possible, and that
Life, finds a way.
Wu thinks he's an idiot, and Grant asks what kind of dinosaur he's holding. Wu tells him it's a velociraptor, which gives Grant an erection. Cut to the holding paddock last seen in The Hook, and fully grown velociraptors roar from inside. Grant and the rest of the group have gathered. Hammond tries to persuade them to head back before a cow is raised on a harness above the pen. Feeding time. Being sadistic bastards, or just fascinated at the idea of seeing velociraptors in action, Grant and the others rush to see as the cow is lowered down. The raptors tear it to shreds off screen as they stare in horror. Muldoon reappears, saying how dangerous the raptors are and they should all be destroyed. Grant quizzes him on the raptors, with Muldoon saying that they're extremely intelligent, especially the pack leader, the big one. The remains of the harness are lifted up, and Hammond invites them to lunch. Obviously, no one is hungry, and instead, they are understandably shaken by what they've just seen. Hammond talks of his big plans, while Gennaro still sees dollar signs and thinks of ways to make more money from the park. The reality of how dangerous the animals can be sinks into Grant, Ellie and Malcolm, and they warn Hammond of the dangers of playing God. Malcolm is particularly scathing in his argument.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Before they can go any further, however, Hammond hears of the arrival of some very important VIPs. Cue the park's target audience.
Grandpa!
Children. Hammond's grandkids run up and hug him as Grant looks on, more freaked out than he was with the velociraptors. Some Ford Explorers pull up outside the visitor centre, ready for the tour to begin. Hammond goes back to the control room to observe everything. Ellie tries to get the kids to ride with Grant, who refuses, lumbering them with the lawyer instead. Malcolm goes into horndog mode. The show over, Hammond enters the control room where Muldoon tells him there's a tropical storm heading towards the island. They decide to keep an eye on it, hoping it'll bugger off on its own. We are also introduced to the park's chief engineer, Ray Arnold, played by a subdued Samuel L. Jackson, who kicks off the tour. The tour cars pass through the huge gates of the park, with Malcolm continuing to be a cynical edgelord. The first stop is the Dilophosaur paddock. The animal has stage fright though, and the only dinosaurs our guests see is the voice of Richard Kiley. The guests are suitably disappointed. Back in the control room, Ray notices the headlights are not responding. Another glitch. Hammond decides to take his frustrations out on Nedry, who is totally up for a fight. He argues back about how Hammond is running this place on a skeleton staff and how indispensable he is to the automation process. Hammond goes into disappointed parent mode, reminding Nedry of his previous mistakes, the cause of Nedry's current financial problems, and his motivations for what's coming next. Nedry goes on a rant and Muldoon tells him to STFU. It's Rex time. Or rather, it would be if she wasn't such a prima donna. Even when tempted with a goat, she refuses to go on stage until she is ready, once again disappointing the assembled group. Malcolm quips about how the Rex can't be controlled and the futility of the entire venture. He taunts Hammond as the cars move on, really pissing him off this time.
I really hate that man.
Ellie expresses her curiosity about Chaos Fury, prompting Malcolm to go into sexy teacher mode as he gives her his own personal lesson. TLDR, the tiniest detail can bring about the biggest changes in the system. Grant's dinosaur hard-on comes back when he hears something out in the bush, spotting one of the park's vehicles. Hammond, Arnold and Muldoon lament the fact that the visitors can just open the car doors, while Nedry sits patiently, waiting for his moment. Tim tries to bond with Grant, who isn't interested. Lex even does a fake fall to get his attention, which Ellie loves. All tomfoolery is put aside though as Grant hears something big up ahead, and tells him to stay back. Timmy thinks he's too much of a Chad for that and walks forward, finding Grant standing next to a sick Triceratops along with the park's veterinarian, Jerry Harding, played by executive producer Gerald R. Molan, and, in the novels, the father of the Lost World character Sarah Harding. The group gathers in wonder around the sick Triceratops, which Muldoon has tranquilized at some point in between scenes. Grant gushes about the trike being his favourite dinosaur, while Ellie checks out some blisters on the creature's tongue, deciding that it's eaten something poisonous. She finds West Indian lilac, which Harding tells her the dinosaurs don't eat. Unconvinced, she says she needs to examine dino poop. Malcolm is less than excited. Back at the control room, the storm is still on full course to hit the island, and Muldoon says they'll have to cut the tour short and pick it up again tomorrow. Arnold tells the rest of the staff to evacuate, and Hammond considers the whole thing a failure. Malcolm looks at a visual personification of the year 2020 as Ellie dives her hands in and rummages around. Unable to find any trace of the berries, she walks back to the group. Malcolm tells her he likes his women clean.
While the sick Triceratops subplot is never really resolved in the film, there is a deleted scene where Ellie discovers some gizzard stones that the animal has been ingesting that are contaminated with the berries, and that's how it got sick. I'm guessing for pacing reasons they just took it out.
Nedry prepares to strike as an ominous thunderclap sounds the oncoming storm. Gennaro says it's time to GTFO, and Ellie elects to stay behind with Harding. Harding says he'll drop her at the visitor centre before leaving the island. The group goes back to the car, sans Ellie, as Nedry frantically calls Dogson's man on the dock via the wonders of a pre-recorded video. Nedry begs him for more time, but the man says,
"The captain says we gotta go! We gotta go!"
Hammond laments the failure of his tour, while Arnold tells him,
It could have been worse, John. A lot worse.
lol. Nedry decides it's time to make a move and makes his excuses for leaving the control room, making a cover story for why some systems might go off. The others are so bored they just buy it. Nedry starts his clock. Game time. As the cars rumble back through the jungle, Grant thinks about kids, asking Malcolm if he has any. Always the Lothario, Malcolm tells him he has 3, currently, and is always on the lookout for more opportunities to make more. Nedry sleuths his way into the embryo storage as the security systems shut down. Arnold notices the system's failure, but Nedry's story keeps him from getting suspicious. Nedry takes the embryos he needs. The video goes off in the cars as Malcolm asks if Ellie is DTF. He quickly realizes she's in a relationship with Grant and apologizes for sniffing on another man's turf, like a good patriarchal son should. Suddenly, the cars stop and all power systems start failing all over the park. Hammond, Arnold and Muldoon shite themselves as defences start failing. Nedry makes his way into the park, manually opening the main gate. Unable to find him, Arnold takes over his station, cleaning it in the process. A nervous Muldoon asks if the raptor fences are still on. They are, leading Hammond to question.
Why the hell would he turn the other ones off?
Self-explanatory really, as Nedry needs them off to open the electrified gates in order to get to the dock. However, being a bloody idiot, he doesn't pay attention to the road and crashes into the East Dock sign, rendering it useless. He takes a guess at which way to go. Arnold frantically tries to get the fences back on, but can't get through Nedry's systems. Hammond tells him to try the phone, and they realise the lines are down. Hammond asks where the vehicles stopped. This build-up of action takes us to the screenplay's midpoint, the point of no return, the crisis point for the main character where the bad guys close in, and for us, it's where the shit hits the fan. The cars are stopped at the Rex paddock, with both of their radios out. Grant takes it in a stride, while Malcolm starts panicking, realising that chaos theory is definitely in effect. Timmy finds some night vision goggles, and against Gennaro's monetary worries, continues to play with them, watching the world in night vision. It's while he's doing this that loud thumps are heard, getting closer to the cars. The cup of water starts to vibrate with each pound, worrying the inhabitants. Timmy takes another look to see that the goat is gone. Well, not really. Deciding the time is right, the park's Tyrannosaurus Rex, or Rexy to fans, has decided to make her appearance. Touching the now unelectrified fence, she swallows the goat whole and turns her attention towards the cars. Gennaro absolutely shites himself and runs from the car, abandoning the kids to hide in a nearby toilet. The Rex breaks out, confirming Malcolm's suspicions of the park's safety, and takes a jaunt around the cars. Grant tells him to keep absolutely still.
An outdated theory that only really works in the films. Someone does try this in the second novel, and it does not end well.
Lex finds a torch and thinks that she can scare the Rex away with it, but all that does is draw her attention. The Rex walks over to the car and inspects the puny, panicking humans within. Rexy decides they look like good chow and attacks, breaking the dome and proceeding to flip the car onto its side as Grant and Malcolm watch in horror. Rexy goes to town on the car, deciding, particularly, that she likes the wheel. Realising she's drawn by light, Grant looks for a way to grab her attention, finding a flare. He interrupts Rexy's rampage, lighting it up and yelling for her attention. Oh yeah, he got it. Grant throws the flare into the paddock, hoping to lure Rexy away, when Malcolm decides he also wants to be a hero and runs out with his own flare. bad idea, as Malcolm panics and runs, with Rexy right on his tail, straight into Gennaro, cowering on the toilet. Malcolm is injured and gets buried under the debris. It's probably for the best though, as Rexy decides to get her first taste of man-flesh, and she likes it, picking up Gennaro and ridding the world of one less lawyer. While she's distracted, Grant manages to pull Lex free from the car, but he's unable to rescue Timmy before Rexy comes back looking for dessert. They stay completely still as she looks for them. Unable to see them, she messes with the car some more, forcing them back into the paddock over a steep drop to the trees below. Grant grabs onto the destroyed cable as the Rex pushes the car over the edge with Tim still inside. They get clear just in time as the car falls down to the trees below and Rexy lets out a triumphant roar, letting them know they're her bitch now. Ellie is now in the control room, gathered around Nedry's station with the others, while Arnold tells them that the programs Nedry used are too difficult to bypass and they can't fix the problem without him. Grant asks Muldoon to go and get his kids, and Ellie elects to go with him. Meanwhile, Nedry is still fumbling around looking for the boat, which has surely gone by this point. He takes his eyes off the road and crashes onto a downed tree, getting stuck. He sees the road and climbs down to winch his car to a tree. He's not alone though, as one of the Parkstall officers show up, having escaped. Nedry tries to distract it with a stick, mocking it in the process, thinking it's too dumb to be a real threat. The real dumb creature is him though, as the Dilo follows him and goes into attack mode, spitting venom at him. He climbs back to the car and gets splatted again, right in the eyes, running into the car and unknowingly losing the shaving can with the embryos. He climbs back in, closing the door, before realizing that the Dilo got there first. The Dilo feasts on Nedry as the shaving can and subsequent embryos are buried underneath the running mud. Having escaped the Rex, Grant realizes he has to go and rescue Tim. He tells Lex to hide in a pipe, promising he'll come back. He climbs the tree and finds Tim still in the car, understandably shaken. He convinces him to climb out, but as they begin to descend, the car decides it wants to come with them. They frantically climb to the bottom and the car lands on top of them, the shattered roof saving them from certain death. Ellie and Muldoon arrive at the scene of the Rex attack and begin searching for the survivors. They find Gennaro's remains and Malcolm, heavily injured from his fall.
Can we chance moving him?
Please chance it.
They risk taking him. Rexy is still around, and as Muldoon is about to call it, Ellie spots the other car. They investigate and find a series of footprints leading away. Malcolm perks up in the Jeep as the thumping begins again. Rexy is coming back. Ellie and Muldoon make it back to the car as she erupts from the forest and gives chase. Rexy easily catches up to the car, terrifying Ellie, who is seeing her for the first time. We get the classic shot, and she breaks her way through a tree. Muldoon manages to get to 5th gear and they outpace her. Grant and the kids hear her roars but figure they're far enough away that they can shelter for the night. They climb another tree and see a herd of brachiosaurs grazing in the distance. Fascination takes over Grant again and he tries to communicate with them. Lex warns him against it, but he reassures her they are herbivores. Grant tells her they're just doing what they do. The kids snuggle in and bond over some naff jokes. Grant once again comprehends his future, throwing away his raptor claw. Ellie finds Hammond making his way through the freezers melting ice cream. They have a heart-to-heart conversation, where Hammond is determined to make the park work better next time, blaming Nedry for their current woes. Ellie tells him he could never make it work as they actually never had control in the first place. It's too much for them and now people are dying. The words hit John hard as she joins him in eating the ice cream.
Spare no expense.
Dawn breaks and Grant and the kids wake up to a brachiosaur snacking on the leaves of their tree. Calming Lex, Grant decides to try feeding the dinosaur, which works. They touch it, realizing the wonder of physically touching a creature millions of years old. Lex tries too.
Up here.
She's still not a fan. They trek through the jungle, dropping some quick exposition about Lex being a nerd, hacker, while Grant stops, finding something else. Dinosaur eggs. Turns out some frogs are able to change their sex in single-sex environments and breed, and the dinosaurs are doing the same thing. Malcolm was right. Some footprints that look suspiciously like Velociraptor lead away from the nest.
Wait a minute. If the dinosaurs are changing their sex, and by extension their gender, then does that make them trans? Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, they're coming! No!
At the control room, Malcolm shows off his goods, while Hammond comes up with an ingenious plan to get the power back on. Turn everything off and on again. The others are dubious. There's also a lysine contingency that Muldoon suggests, but Hammond is resolute. Turn everything off and on again. Ellie's words have hit him hard. Arnold complies. Initially, nothing happens. And then, a single prompt. Okay, first they have to turn the generators back on, but after that they're good. Arnold runs off to do this while Hammond moves everyone to the emergency bunker. Grant and the kids continue their journey back to the visitor center where they see a flock of dinosaurs racing across the plains. Tim correctly identifies them as Gallimimus, and he called Lex the nerd. But the flock their way, causing them to run. Grant and the kids are caught up in the stampede and hide behind a tree just before Rexy bursts forth and takes down one of the unfortunate dinosaurs. Grant and Timmy watch with fascination because they're both sadists. At the bunker, Ellie is worried. Arnold has been away for too long and the power still isn't back on. Hammond calls it a delay.
But John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
Ellie says she'll go and turn the power on, and this time Muldoon elects to go with her, gearing up before they do. Hammond creates an awkward moment when he suggests he should go because chivalry. Ellie brushes that bullshit off and heads out with Muldoon. They very quickly discover that the power reset turned off the raptor fences. Of course they've escaped. Tensions and momentum are escalating as Muldoon and Ellie make their way to the shed. Muldoon sees a raptor up ahead, hunting them, and goes after it, giving Ellie the distraction she needs to get to the shed. She takes off, jumping over the same log twice, and makes it to the shed. There's no sign of Arnold. Hammond and Malcolm guide her through the dark labyrinth towards the generator.
An extra scene was written where Arnold would reach the shed and be attacked by a velociraptor, but an actual storm hit the production while they were filming and they were never able to shoot it. I'm guessing life imitates art.
Grant and the kids reach the outer fence perimeter. Testing the fences and finding them to be off, Grant suggests they climb. The kids are reluctant, and even Grant's dad joke can't convince them. The threat of Rexy does though, and they begin the ascent. Ellie reaches the generator as Grant and the kids continue climbing. Hammond talks her through and she begins reconnecting the power, not knowing that Timmy is still on the fence. The second act turning point begins, the end of the second act and the protagonist's lowest point. The second act turning point comes at a time when the protagonist has tried a solution to the current problem, in this case, Grant taking the kids back to the visitor compound and the power being turned back on. Only problem is, the power comes on and Timmy gets shocked, knocking him unconscious and possibly dead. To make matters even worse, a raptor jumps out at Ellie, having hidden there all along. She finds the remains of Arnold and runs, managing to escape the shed and shutting the raptor inside. There's worse still to come though, as Muldoon finally tracks down that other raptor and prepares to fire. Twice. But he underestimated their intelligence and the third raptor, the big one, gets the drop on him.
Clever girl.
Grant's foreshadowing in the first act pays off as she attacks him from the side and, well, we know what she's doing. Those screams are appropriate. Grant frantically gives Timmy CPR, eventually bringing him back to consciousness. Together, they venture into the third act. They reach the visitor center and Grant thinks it looks safe enough to leave the kids and go search for the others. He finds Ellie outside, suspiciously missing her shirt.
I've heard a rumour over the years that Ellie actually found Muldoon's body and covered him up with her shirt, and that's why she doesn't have it here, but I've never been able to find any evidence of it. But it is a cool headcanon theory.
The kids chow down on the food available to them before realising they are not alone, seeing the big one in silhouette right behind them. The kids flee into the kitchen, turning off the lights for good measure. The big one appears in the window and snarls. You can still see Muldoon's blood on her. Grant gears up, double-checking with Ellie that the third raptor is still locked up. LOL. The big one opens the door and calls to her subordinate, who quickly appears. She asserts dominance, and the hunt is on. Lex and Timmy crawl through the kitchen as the raptors stalk them. Timmy freezes in fear, and is about to be caught by the big one when Lex grabs her attention by banging a spoon on the floor. She climbs into a cupboard as the big one charges at her. She tries to pull the door closed, but it's too late. Until it's revealed she pulled a fast one using the reflective surfaces to fool the big one and crawls away. Timmy takes his chance and runs to the freezer, with the subordinate raptor in pursuit. The raptor slides inside as Timmy escapes, and Lex closes and locks the door with a chain.
Good luck opening that one, motherfucker.
Lex grabs Tim and they run from the kitchen as the big one gets up. And boy, is she pissed. Grant and Ellie run into them and they head to the control room to restore the power. They reach the control room, pursued by the big one. She opens the door, forcing Grant and Ellie to hold it closed. It's time for that earlier exposition about Lex to pay off as she takes over Nedry Station.
It's a Unix system.
Is it aye? Lex navigates the Unix system, while Grant and Ellie struggle to keep the big one out. She powers the systems just in time, securing the doors and turning all the park systems back online. Grant calls Hammond.
Call the mainland. Tell them to send the damn helicopters.
It's not over yet, as the big one breaks into the control room and brings with her the film's climax. Grant, Ellie and the kids climb into the air vents as she stalks them from below. She almost gets Lex, but Grant gives her a swift boot to the face. They climb down into the visitor center, still pursued by the persistent big one. They even try climbing onto the skeletons, but she follows them. They fall to the ground one by one, with Tim nearly getting killed yet again. As if the big one wasn't bad enough, that other wee bastard raptor from the shed shows up to join the party. The raptors close in from both sides. It's the black moment, the moment in the climax where it looks like the villain will win and our protagonists will fail. The shed raptor jumps,
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
and is caught by Rexy. Grant and the others watch in astonishment as Rexy kills the raptor and begins to feed. The big one will not take this shit and jumps onto Rexy's back, throwing down. With both dinosaurs distracted, Grant and the kids make their escape. Hammond pulls up outside and they hop in, with Grant telling Hammond,
After careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park.
Hammond agrees. Inside, Rexy wins the fight and kills the big one. She throws her away like a bitch, visibly scarred, and throws out a triumphant roar to end the climax. Fuck yeah. The resolution begins as Grant and the rest of the survivors climb onto the rescue helicopter. Hammond takes one last sorrowful look at his creations as Grant pulls him back. In the epilogue, we see Hammond mourning all he's lost, Malcolm in quiet contemplation, and Grant snuggled with the kids. Ellie looks at him happily as they both realise he's gotten over his issues with children, and he's now ready to be a father.
If only.
The helicopter flies into the horizon as the credits play. So that's the synopsis and story structure for the film. The hook, Joffrey's death, the inciting incident, Hammond showing up at the dig site, the first act turning point, the Brachiosaurus reveal, the midpoint, the power failure and Rex's rampage, the second act turning point is the power being restored and the velociraptors being on the loose, and the climax, the raptors in the visitor centre. It's pretty standard and follows escalating threats and momentum building to an incredibly satisfying climax. But let's look at the rest of it now. The theme of Jurassic Park is pretty simple. Mankind shouldn't try to play God. We don't have that kind of control, and if we think we do, nature will eventually take its course. It may be simple, but it flows through everything in this film, from the story to the characters and their actions. There isn't really a specific human antagonist in Jurassic Park. It's not the dinosaurs either. Some of them, the big one in particular, may act antagonistically, but she's not really. She's just doing what she does. Rexy isn't an antagonist either. She's more of an anti-hero, showing up, doing her own thing for her own reasons that happen to benefit the human characters.
The real antagonist of Jurassic Park is the arrogance of man. The idea that we can control nature and bend it to our will. Sometimes, we just shouldn't. The characters in Jurassic Park share multiple character archetypes, although there's usually one that defines them as a whole.
Alan Grant is the protagonist of the film. He's the one whose journey we follow. Yes, we follow Ellie and the others in the control room, but those are secondary and supporting to Grant and his journey. In archetypal terms, he's the hero, the one who rises to the challenge of protecting the kids and getting them through the park. He also embodies the everyman, Yes, he's a paleontologist, a specialised subject matter, but he's also a grouchy, oldish man who prefers hard graft in the dirt as opposed to working with computers and finds kids to be a nuisance. Physically, his journey is to sign off on the island, but from the midpoint on, it's to escape alive. That's what he wants, but what does he really need, aside from the need to stay alive? He needs to reconcile his place in the world, now that dinosaurs exist again, but, and more importantly, he needs to learn to like kids. Ellie wants to have kids, but in the beginning he's reluctant, considering them to be a smelly nuisance. Throughout his journey, he finds himself having to take care of them. He leads them through the park, and even risks his life for them. He bonds with them, and by the end of the film has grown to like them, to realise that he likes kids and could have some of his own. Lol. He also reconciles his own place in the world, acknowledging that he himself is a dinosaur, and his way of studying them needs to change. Symbolically, this is shown when he throws away his raptor claw. But he still proves useful as a dinosaur expert because, well, you say it, John.
Better to get the children through Jurassic Park than a dinosaur expert.
Yeah, pretty damn useful. Plus, the park is covered up and left to rot, so his job will be fine. Hammond inhabits a few character archetypes: the creator, obviously, and the herald, as it's literally his actions and lifelong dream that spring the plot and the entire film into being. Hammond's arc comes in a major departure from the book. While there, he never learns his lesson and is a much darker character. Here, he is truly benevolent, just wanting to entertain the world, and when things go wrong, get it right next time. He almost falls into his book counterpoint's madness, but it's Ellie who brings him back, reminding him of the human cost to his ventures and the impossibility of trying to maintain control over his creations. He can also be seen as a kindly mentor archetype, with the conventional death occurring when Ellie brings him back to reality. This is a turning point for his character, as from this point on his only concern is getting everyone out alive. By the end he is humbled, realising the error of his ways, wrought with sadness at his creations, and vowing that the park should never be opened. You might notice the theme of mankind's arrogance weaving in here again, and this is present in Malcolm's characterisation. While it could be considered he fills a comic relief archetype, he is a bit of a jester. He's also a lover, the threshold guardian, and extremely arrogant, telling Hammond his venture is doomed from the off. He's an active foil to Hammond. He's right, of course, but his own ego comes back to bite him in the form of Rexy, and from then on, he takes much more of a back seat, equal parts because he's injured, but also because he's being humbled. His rambunctious, flirtatious personality starts to become more serious by the film's end, where he has no more quips to make or grand statements to make. Human arrogance and superiority come back to bite many of the characters in the end. Each of the deaths in the film, with the exception of Joffrey, come about through the character's actions and outlooks in the park. Take Nedry for instance. Nedry occupies the trickster archetype. Although his intentions are upfront from the start, the use of dramatic irony allows the audience to see what he's up to while the other characters are left in the dark. He thinks he's better and smarter than the creatures in the park, and quickly finds himself outwitted when he encounters a Dilophosaurus. His greed and ambition are his downfall, and while he occupies an antagonistic characterization, he isn't a true antagonist. Good writing has antagonists that don't think they are antagonists. They don't do things just to be bad. Nedry is frustrated that Hammond cut his pay because of his mistakes, and Dodgson offers him an out. Dodgson is more antagonistic than Nedry, but he's only in one scene. He's a dark shadow to Hammond, the representation of what Hammond would be if he were more of a greedy bastard. But again, he's barely in the film and only shows up in one scene, yet his actions affect the entire plot. Muldoon is closer to a mentor archetype. He educates the group about the dinosaurs and respects how dangerous they are. But even he underestimates them when hunting the raptors, which leads to his death. Arnold is more of a stock character, a tech head at home with technology, but woefully unequipped to deal with the realities when he has to venture out into the park and turn the power back on. Gennaro is a mostly negative stock character concerned with bean counting. He is immediately obsessed with the amount of money the park can make that he doesn't even think about the bigger ramifications until they're staring him in the face. Gennaro flees when things get bad due to his cowardice and quickly gets his comeuppance. Lex and Tim represent the innocent, being mostly children in harm's way in need of rescue. Their intentions are pure, and they represent the worst case scenario for the dangers of the park. Dead children. They do have their moments, with Tim being a younger dinosaur expert able to identify several species, and Lex being a hacker who is able to bring the park back online. They don't really need arcs, but they do have some moments to shine, with Lex proving her worth as a hacker and Tim as a younger dinosaur expert. One character I haven't spoken about so far is Ellie. her journey, and her arc. And that's because, well, she doesn't really have one. That's not a detriment, she's already self-actualized. She's an ally, a lover. She learns the bigger meaning that mankind can't have control over nature and relays it to Hammond, but she doesn't have a personal journey to go on, and that's fine. Not every character has to arc if they're already strong enough. It says a lot about the progressiveness of a film when it features a strong female character who doesn't need to arc, but rather acts as an ally to the protagonist in the journey. She's already perfect. The dialogue in Jurassic Park is pretty strong as well. A lot of lines are taken straight from the book, particularly when it comes to Malcolm. The adults talk like adults and the children talk like children. Exposition dumps are handled cleanly and each scene serves to move the plot forward. The dialogue is believable, and ultimately that's all you can really ask for. That the characters speak in a way that people normally would speak.
Today is opening day for Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg's prehistoric mega movie. 65 million years in the making, Jurassic Park will show you dinosaurs as you've never seen them before.
Jurassic Park was a certified blockbuster on release, winning 3 Academy Awards and being the highest grossing film of all time until Titanic in 1997. But why though? The script is good. It's really good. It's not Godfather level good. It's not setting the world on fire alone. So why is Jurassic Park a classic? It's a combination of things. The film represented a breakthrough for visual effects. Before, dinosaurs had only been seen in stop motion, or more crudely, as lizards costumed in prosthetics. The ability to show fully fluid, smooth dinosaurs in a computer, combined with the exceptional animatronic designs by the late Stan Winston, came together to make these dinosaurs fully believable, even though they're only on screen for about 15 minutes. The casting and costumes play a part too. Sam Neill as Alan Grant is frankly iconic. From his hat, the blue shirt, the sunglasses, it just works. People remember it. People remember Jeff Goldblum all in black as Ian Malcolm, Laura Dern dressed as Ellie Sattler, and Richard Attenborough in all white as John Hammond. Note that he and Malcolm kind of juxtapose each other and are constantly at odds. There's also the sense of adventure as well. The escapism, the idea that somewhere on this planet, dinosaurs could be brought back to life. Also, kids love dinosaurs. The public loves dinosaurs. The fascination and the mystique around them. The idea that these creatures actually existed on our planet. The film was a huge influence on dinomania and interest in paleontology in the early 90s, and it still persists to this day. You still see children with dinosaur bags, lunchboxes, most of them branded from Jurassic Park or, for the newest generation, Jurassic World. It was a perfect melting point of stellar filmmaking and public interest that catapulted this film into the stratosphere, making it an instant classic. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention John Williams' score in respect to the success of this film. Anything this man touches turns to gold. The theme for Jurassic Park is still iconic today, and it still gets used. It still captures that sense of wonder, of amazement, of adventure. It's another very strong factor as to why this film was such a huge success.
I saw this film at quite a young age, roughly about 5. My parents rented it on VHS, and I'll always remember seeing the little VHS sleeve with the see-through cover, through which I could just make out the Jurassic Park logo underneath. I don't remember much from the film until it gets to the Rex attack. I remember when she eats Gennaro, my father covered my eyes, at which point I just went, no, rewound the VCR and watched it again. From that point on, my childhood changed. I had an instant fascination with dinosaurs, which has never left me and has evolved into a love of filmmaking as I got older. The film was a big turning point in my life at quite a young age. Is the script perfect? No. There are some things that don't make sense, such as, it's hinted that the velociraptors are the animals that are breeding, and yet they haven't escaped their paddock yet. The sick Triceratops subplot is left unresolved, and while there are deleted scenes, and I will talk about them, I don't consider them in the overall product. Is the film perfect though, when all of these elements come together? Abso-fucking-lutely. I have this film memorized. I can infinitely quote it and watch it time and time again. I do. Objectively, Jurassic Park is a strong film about mankind's struggle over nature and nature fighting back. Subjectively, It's my favourite film of all time.
I'd give Jurassic Park 5 stars out of 5, with a roaring Rexy sign of approval.
So that's my screenplay and story analysis of Jurassic Park. If you live in the UK, you can watch Jurassic Park on Sky Movies or NOWtv. You can rent it from a whole bunch of online retailers, or you can also just buy the physical media. I'll always advocate for owning physical media, as you get better picture and sound quality than you would via streaming. I'll also include links to Michael Crichton's original draft of the screenplay, as well as the draft that David Koepp wrote down below. Do you agree with my analysis? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if there are any other films or screenplays you would like me to cover. Until next time, I've been Stumo, and thank you for watching.